Good afternoon. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. It was an extremely violent night in Cleveland last night. There were two separate shootings. Both of them happened on West 6th, but I want to be very clear. There were two different West 6th involved here, one in the Warehouse District, one in Tremont. We have Mayor Justin Bibb just speaking. Let's take you live to West 6th in the Warehouse District.
A mass shooting, but it was a tragic and sad day nonetheless, and truly shows the massive gun problem we have, not just in Cleveland, not just in Ohio, but across this nation. Secondly, it's so important that we honor the hard work and the amazing response time by police department and EMS as well too. Every weekend we have a large police presence right here in the Warehouse District, and our first responders did a fantastic job to provide aid to all the victims last night as well. Thirdly, I want to also highlight the importance of this fact. Last summer, the Republican-led legislature in Columbus passed Senate Bill 215. And across this state, from Cleveland to Columbus and Cincinnati, we've seen an uptick in shootings across our state. We need Republicans in Columbus to give us mayors more tools to get guns off our streets. I am sick and tired of getting these calls late at night. I'm sick and tired of hearing from our residents and victims of gun violence, and Republicans blaming us as mayors for violent crime. We need their help. We need their help. And it's important that we hold them accountable for passing dangerous gun laws in our state that make it hard for us to keep our communities safe and secure. Now, Chief Drum is going to give an update as well. Chief.
Thank you, Mayor. Appreciate it. Good afternoon. I'm going to be relatively brief. We have Commander Tucker here as well. He's in charge of the 3rd District, which is where this shooting took place. Again, I'm going to get into some of the particulars, what information we have right now. It's changing as our investigation continues. So approximately about 2:25 this morning, right here in this location, we had an individual who actually started shooting at a crowd of people. That's what we have right now. It's important to note and understand we have officers assigned here. It's called the warehouse detail. We have officers assigned here at that particular time as patrons were coming out of different nightclubs. We had two officers actually and their cars, their marked cars, right at the corner there of West St. Clair and West 6th. Marked cars, officers in uniform. There are light bars, their lights are going. We also had an additional officer just a little bit further north, parked, I believe, just getting out the car, and also a sergeant that was also driving northbound from West St. Clair towards West Lakeside when this occurred. This particular individual started shooting towards the crowd. As you all know, struck 9 individuals. The officers immediately ran to the gunfire, ran to the victims, and rendered first aid. All the officers rendered first aid to the victims. As I stated, we had 9 total victims, 7 males and 2 females ranging from ages 23 to 38 years old. Again, I stress, we had officers assigned here. This is part of their detail, a very visible presence of officers, but yet this individual decided to use that weapon and shoot individuals, even with our officers here. So it's not a matter of police response. It's not a matter of police visibility, because we were here and we will continue to be here. What we have now for suspect, the subject, is a black male that we know right now, a black male, and that's the extent of it. May have had a grill in his mouth, a gold grill. We do have some leads, and we'll get that information out to you guys a little bit later. But I have to stress again, our officers were on scene, and they responded immediately. In fact, they were the first ones to call our dispatch center and let them know what was going on and call for EMS. And in the process of waiting for EMS to respond, their response was extremely well and quick. Our officers rendered first aid to all those victims. Our hearts go out to the victims, but we are going to continue to work extremely hard to try to find this individual. And again, we have some information that we will be sharing with you. Right now, I'm going to have Commander Tucker come out, and he's going to get into some of the particulars as well.
How's everyone doing? So as the chief said, we had several officers that were in the area. After the shooting, They responded to the gunfire and they rendered aid. They did a fantastic job. I also like to thank the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office was in here within about a minute of this happening. And them getting here and helping with the crime scene and the evidence really helped my officers render aid to the victims of the gunshots. So, is there anything else that you have? Any other questions?
Yeah, we'll take a few questions if you guys have any.
In regards to the suspect, was the suspect attending the bars? Did the suspect just arrive on scene, open fire, and leave?
Go ahead. The information we have right now, we're not sure. We're not sure what happened. We have no information, at least right now, from our investigators that there was any type of issues or concerns or trouble. Right now, that may change, but right now we have no indication that there is anything taking place before this individual started shooting.
I have a question for the mayor. Certainly, violence citywide is up, crime is up citywide. Why has there not been more urgency on your part to hire more officers?
Every day we have urgency to invest in our police, to make sure we have enough cops to keep our community safe and secure. And over the next couple of days will be a major announcement on additional investments coming to support having more men and women in our police department.
I have to add in on that one, if the mayor don't mind. This was not an issue of not having enough officers. I want to make sure that's clear. This was not an issue of having more officers. We had officers here in uniform taking care of business here, which was taking care of the folks that are down here enjoying themselves. So it's not a matter of that. Of course, we want more officers, no question about it. But today, last night, was not a matter of having enough officers. I just want to stress that.
But Chief, big picture.
Next question. Next question.
Do you have an update on the victims' conditions, the severity of their conditions?
CMS.
As far as we know, last night we were updated that all the victims suffered non-life-threatening injuries except one male who was serious. So all the injuries were minor except one serious.
Are there any cameras here that caught the shooting, the capture at all?
It's still under investigation. We're going to look at every building around here. If you look around, you can see there are cameras. So we're looking at those. There are cameras on Public Square. There's cameras on just about all these buildings. So our investigators are talking with the owners so we can get as much information as possible. If we capture any images, we'll get that out to you.
What is this city doing to stop this violence from happening?
It's a combination of a lot of things. We have our partnership, as the commander just mentioned, with the Sheriff Department, with the FBI, with the DEA, ATF, and I can go on and go on and go on. As a matter of fact, I just had a conversation with the FBI Special Agent in Charge, Nelson. I had a conversation with Pete Elliott, the Marshal. We're coming up with a game plan. We already work with them, but we're coming up with a specific game plan to deal with some of these things. But please don't lose this. And it's important to understand. We can add 2,000 more officers. But what happened last night wouldn't have stopped what transpired. We can add 2,000 more officers. It's more than that. It's what society needs to do. I believe there's just an over-reliance on the police and police officers. We're going to do our job, and I think we do a relatively good job. Actually, not a relatively good job. We do a good job. Our officers do a tremendous job, and we ask a lot of our officers. But it's going to take more. It takes what we're trying to do now with Mayor Bibb's administration, which is to have a holistic approach, economic development, prevention, intervention, opportunities. Those are the type of things I think will help turn things around. But it's important to note that we cannot change human behavior. That's a different story. We in the police department, not just here in Cleveland, but all over the United States, we're dealing with the symptoms is what we're dealing with. But we're going to do our very best, and I think we're doing a good job to hold those responsible for committing these heinous acts. And we're going to find that individual and hold them accountable.
In addition to what Chief Drummond said, we're going to continue to make additional investments in police and law enforcement and be as aggressive as we can to cut down on gang activity, cut down on drug activity, and get as many illegal guns off our street. Also, through the collaboration with City Council, for the first time ever, we passed a $10 million neighborhood safety endowment fund to make sure over the long run we are investing in the proven interventions that we know that can reduce violent crime in our city. But tackling violent crime is a multi-pronged approach, not just law enforcement, not just the investments we're making in neighborhoods, but we need better legislation at the state and federal level to get illegal guns off our streets. It makes no sense that I, as mayor, and the Councilman McCormick and I can't pass one piece of legislation in Cleveland around gun reform and gun safety. Not one. Because the legislature has taken the power away from mayors to keep our community safe. And so that's why it's important for the public to know this is a multi-pronged approach. And lawmakers in Columbus and lawmakers in D.C., particularly Republicans, have to work with us to address this issue on a short and long-term basis.
But Mayor, your units, your specialized units targeting guns, the gang unit, the NICE unit, your specialized units are incredibly short-staffed.
Next question.
So how are you going to take extra guns off the street?
Next question.
When you have the officers
Ed,
short-staffed?
next question, please.
All right, I'll ask it when she's
Can I
finished.
get the specifics of the vicinity it happened? I understand it wasn't inside any specific location. It was after the bars closed. Is there specifics of the vicinity that happened? I knew it was a group of people, just so people have a better understanding.
Sure. So at approximately 2:25, it actually happened right behind us. The shooter was in this general area, shooting northbound in that direction, and the crowd was maybe 50 to 75 feet behind us.
And what do you guys, have to say? This is a highly populated area, West 6, the Flats. Everyone knows how it looks. What do you have to say to people that are now fearful? Your businesses are going to be affected by something like this. I know it's out of your control, but it's like, what do you have to say to those residents here that are fearful? This is going on in my backyard.
Councilman McCormick.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. Kerry McCormick, I represent downtown and the near west side of the city council. And I just want to emphasize also what the mayor said. As you've heard from our law enforcement, we had police officers on the street when this happened. So, literally, the city can do everything that it can do. If we don't address the fact that essentially anybody can buy and carry a gun in this state, we're not going to get a hold of these issues. That's the simple fact of it. We can beat around the bush, we can ignore the issue, we can excuse people, but until we address the issue of guns flowing freely in this state, even with a cop across the street, that person still was able to access a firearm and commit that crime. So I think that's really important that we emphasize that. We don't talk about that enough, frankly. We have a great, resilient neighborhood in the Warehouse District. I've been in council for almost 8 years now, and quite frankly, this street used to be a whole lot noisier, busier, with more issues than it is today. And that's because the residents of this street and the community, in partnership with folks like Downtown Cleveland Alliance and the city administration, have worked meticulously to root out issues and to welcome in new businesses that, really support a safe, welcoming neighborhood. So there's no excuse for what happened last night. It's a horrible incident. No one is downplaying that. But at the end of the day, we have a wonderful, resilient neighborhood here in downtown Cleveland. Almost 20,000 residents here. They come together. I'll point you to after the riots in 2020, who were the first people out on the street cleaning the street, in addition to the city crews and DCA, were the residents. They came out to clean the streets and support the city. So as you've heard behind you, the city takes this extremely seriously. You have the whole brass here that is going to address these types of violent crimes. But I want to, again, emphasize this is a resilient neighborhood of businesses and residents who do not give up on their neighborhood, who love their neighborhood. Many folks that are in these buildings have been here for over a decade plus. They love and lean in. Again, that doesn't mean that they need to, should, or even think about accepting this type of activity, but they love their neighborhood and they lean in. So,
can I ask about the other shootings that happened as well last night? If there's any chance that those are connected in any way?
That's a fair question. There was an additional shooting relatively close in time to the one that occurred here. Happened also in 2500 block of West 6th in the 2nd District in the Tremont area. And that, from what we know right now, involved an argument, some type of street party. An argument ensued. An individual pulled out a firearm and started shooting, and 3 individuals were struck there. All 3 non-life-threatening injuries as well.
Can you guys talk about the importance of getting tips from the public in situations like these? I know there's already a report for information leading to
Sure.
arrests.
Absolutely. We can only do so much. We need our general public to help us. If anyone saw anything or see anything, especially from last night or any other crime, we encourage them to call Crime Stoppers or call us, especially for this particular crime, at 623-216-623-5318. That's 623-5318.
Chief and Mayor, back on the question about taking guns off the streets. How can you do that when your specialized units targeting guns are incredibly short-staffed.
We are going to continue to have a sense of urgency around having more folks staffed up in our specialized units and putting more officers on the street. It's a major priority for our administration. We know it's a national crisis in terms of police attraction and retention across the country. And over the next couple of days, you'll hear a major announcement about some additional work we're trying to do to address that. Okay, last question.
Chief, how important was it
Yep.
that you had your officers here to give that first aid to all the victims? Because you said that they were non-life-threatening injuries.
Sure.
That probably had a lot to do with having that, quick response.
Peg, I'm really proud of our officers. They were here, like I said, and they responded immediately. They ran to the gunfire and took care of the victims until EMS can respond, utilizing their training. I was taught in the academy, so I'm extremely proud of what they did and so forth. And I hope what they did helped save some of those victims. You heard from the EMS commissioner, it was one that was serious, but again, I think it may have been worse without the intervention of our first responders.
I know you said last question, but can I ask something?
Yeah.
Are you going to be changing anything since this happened? Are you going to be adding more officers? Is there anything to change?
Well, we're, as the mayor stated, we're working on something behind the scenes to get more officers in the front door and also retain the officers that we have. But again, I have to stress again, we had officers here. Officers were on scene when this occurred. Again, so it wasn't a matter of staffing. Officers were on scene. So we want to add more officers. We're going to add more officers. And as the mayor stated, we'll be hopefully announcing something relatively short.
I have one more if I can. I was here last night. I walked across that street at 225. You could not get a ride share out of the flats because the roads were closed. People leave these bars, they hang out, they're waiting on a ride. Gives opportunity for this to happen. Is there any thought to clearing these people out, getting them out of this area after these bars close to prevent things like this from happening?
A good question. We're actually working through our traffic commissioner. We're working on that. We're also working with the folks in the flats to work on an area particularly for ride share. So we are working on those particulars. Also working with the district commander to see about moving folks at bar closure. So we are working on that.
And I'll just add to that. Historically, you'll see the no parking restriction signs there. Historically, CPD 3rd District has set up routes in and around the flats. The no parking zones went in specifically to move folks at those times. So I'm old. I've been around when the people used to be parked up on this street at night, driving everybody crazy. That's why CPD implemented those changes to move people specifically in and around this area. And the flats, quite frankly, were designed before Uber. So, managing that flow in instead of flow out as they were designed to do is an ongoing challenge. But as the chief noted, continue to work on it. But there have been significant changes responding to exactly what you're talking about.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks,
Appreciate
everybody.
it. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Dan DeRose with 19 News as they wrap up the news conference on the mass shooting on West 6th. We've got to be very clear here. It was brought up briefly. There were actually two shootings. Just coincidentally, both on West 6th. One occurred in Tremont, where you can see 3 people were shot roughly 2-3 miles away from where the warehouse district shooting happened. The first shooting in Tremont happened at 1:10. As you heard the police chief Drummond say that it was a street party that got out of control and 3 young men were shot. Again, non-life threatening in that situation. Then at 2:25, so you're talking about an hour and 15 minutes later, you have the second shooting where 9 people shot standing outside of the bar and district in West 6th in downtown, in the warehouse district. A viewer sent us in this cell phone video. You can still see the aftermath. This viewer told us he heard multiple shots fired, and then the chaos that ensued. Some people running, some people fearing that there may be more. One of the big questions, and we do know, if anybody has spent any time in the warehouse district on a Friday, Saturday night, especially in the summer, there are police posted at both ends of West 6th. You heard the chief say that at the end by St. Clair, down at the end there were 2 officers blocking the street to keep people from coming in. That's what they do when the bars go to close. They block off West 6th so that no traffic can get into West 6th. So the police were, in fact, there. You heard one reporter trying to be incessant that this was an issue about police numbers. He was shot down multiple times by the chief and the mayor as really not understanding what the problem is, that this is not an issue of that there weren't officers there. We can show you other video from viewers that show just how many officers within minutes were on scene there. And they're all being commended for the aid that they gave the 9 who were shot. How many of them owe their lives to the first responders, that first aid started right away. And then this is video from the Tremont shooting. This is, again, separate. They do not believe this was connected. This was some sort of neighborhood party that got out of control. And 3 individuals shot. It does not take away from the fact that it was an extremely violent night in Cleveland. The mass shooting on West 6th, and then the 3 that were shot. This is going to be a little bit callous, but by definition, what happened in Tremont is not a mass shooting. The definitions on a national level are 4 or more individuals. That doesn't do anything to comfort the 3 who were shot in Tremont. But when we are speaking about the definition of a mass shooting, it is specifically 4 or more. Again, this shooting in Tremont was at about 1:10, just coincidentally, also on West 6th. Going to be honest, some people didn't even know there was a West 6th in Tremont. We all think of the warehouse district when we think of West 6th. But this was Tremont. 3 men were shot. We know that the ages of 2 of them was a 24-year-old man. He was shot on the right side, the left arm, and the right lower leg, taken to Metro. We know a 23-year-old man also shot in the back and stomach. And then there was a 3rd man. We don't know the age at this time. He was taken, someone loaded him into a car and drove him to Metro. He also had a gunshot wound to the abdomen. We have seen police back on the scene on West 6th. Again, there are a number of individuals that are in, you can see the cameras all over. We know RTA has their headquarters right there on the street. And this was going to be caught and on camera, probably in multiple areas. And we're going to wait for the police chief to release more on that. He gave a rudimentary description, almost not even worth repeating. The only sort of designated mark is that it's a black man, and the chief said he may have been wearing a gold grill. RC in New Yorker was on the ground this morning talking to people as people were waking up, hearing the news of a mass shooting on West 6th. Let's take a listen to the report she's filed.
It's not the news anyone wants to hear.
It's terrifying. It really is. You just think you're out having a good time, and the worst thing that might happen is a hangover. You're not thinking that you're going to lose your life over whatever silliness is going on at 2 in the morning.
9 people shot here on West 6th and Johnson Court in Cleveland's warehouse district, a popular area where residents shop, eat, and play, including out-of-town visitors.
I just got here. I don't live in the area, so this is new to me, so now I really don't feel safe.
This is cell phone video provided to 19 News from a viewer who lives in the area. He told us he heard multiple shots before people started running for cover. 19 News cameras rolling Sunday morning as investigators gathered evidence. Several officers focused on this RTA building on West 6th. Investigators are reviewing surveillance footage, including some of the cameras in the area, to pinpoint exactly what happened that led up to this shooting.
Unfortunately, this is just common in America at this point, so this is like the example of what happens the next day. I'm just going on my walk with my dog, and this is the same way I always go. So, it's disturbing that, this happened right here, but that's just our common issue in this country, so.
That's really awful. We've hung out here a lot. We've gone to lots of games when we lived here, and I lived here back in '99, and I remember it being very different then too. So hopefully the city will get a handle on it and people will feel safe again. That's terrifying.
Reporting in downtown Cleveland, Sia New Yorker, 19 News.
And as you heard, Mayor Justin Bibb immediately go the legislative route, blaming Republicans in the state for passing legislation that takes the power away from mayors to pass any kind of meaningful gun legislation within their own cities, going right at Republican lawmakers early on in his news conference. Just going to wrap this up here. If you're just tuning in, Mayor Justin Bibb, Police Chief Drummond taking questions on last night's mass shooting. 9 people hit on West 6th in the Warehouse District. Fortunately, and this is miraculous, of the 9 that were shot, none of them are said to be life-threatening. There is one man who is in serious condition, so we will wait and hope for the best in that situation. The other 8, and we know the breakdown, there were 7 men and 2 women who were shot. Their ages are from age 23 to 38 years old. And again, just a very basic description given of the shooter, even though there were a lot of officers in that area at the time. I know where that parking lot is. It is easy to escape out the back towards the Justice Center and make a quick getaway. But no word of any kind of confrontation with the shooter, even though officers were there, plenty of officers at bar closing on West 6th. That is a given because of how popular that area is. We're going to have complete coverage on this. Cleveland did not want to become the next statistic with a mass shooting in our downtown area. The mayor has an issue now to deal with. How do you make people feel safe? And you've got a shooter that tried to kill as many people as possible, and that shooter is still out there. $5,000 reward being offered. Let's show you the phone number one last time. Crime Stoppers is taking anonymous calls, 216-252-7463. They don't record your phone call. They don't have caller ID. They don't take your name. You may know something. Put in a simple call. I saw this. I saw a car take off. I heard from somebody that this is what happened. Give them a call. Your tip could lead to getting somebody off our street that just shot 9 people early this morning. We're going to return you to normal programming. Make sure you tune in for the very latest. If we get any kind of better description on the suspect, if we get any video from the city of Cleveland, we'll make sure we put that right away on all of our digital properties, cleveland19.com and the Cleveland 19 Facebook page. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media at Cleveland 19 News.